Thank you, Judy, for the introduction. My name is Onur Ünal. I'm the Life Sciences Projects Manager at MIPS. It stands for Maryland Industrial Partnerships. And before I start, I want to let everyone know that I guess there was some interest in scheduling one-on-one meetings with me. Unfortunately, there were some issues with the system, I guess. I haven't gotten any requests, but I will be holding open office hours tomorrow via Zoom, 1 p.m. to 3 p.m. And folks who had expressed interest, they've already gotten an email from me earlier today and the calendar invite. If anybody is interested in joining me tomorrow, 1 to 3 p.m., shoot me an email. My email is right here at the bottom, owner@umd.edu, and I'll send you that calendar invite as well. And then feel free to jump in between 1 and 3 and ask your questions about MIPS.
That's great. And just to let folks know that if you had expressed an interest in meeting with the owner and then learning more about the MIPS program, and we gave your contact information to owner yesterday, I guess. So as he said,
right.
He reached out to you. You're welcome to still try using the system, but this might be more efficient. And thanks for making your time available, owner.
Sure. My pleasure. Okay, so let me talk about MIPS, who we are, what we do. And MIPS is a program that's a University of System of Maryland program. We cover all campuses within the university system. And what we do is we provide funding for company, university, collaborative research projects. We don't give money to the companies. Our money goes to the university, and actually the companies have to put money in. So there's a cost share. And our primary criteria is commercialization potential. It's an economic development program. We want jobs created in Maryland. So if you're interested in doing a MIPS, the first step is to find a university researcher you would like to collaborate with at any one of the University of Maryland campuses. The applications are submitted jointly with the company and the university partner. And if awarded, it's a competitive process, and we do evaluate the proposals on both technical and economic development potential. The funding that we, MIPS and the companies provide go to the university researcher at a University of Maryland campus, where they do the university portion of the research in collaboration with the company researchers. And in terms of IP, we don't have any IP restrictions or requirements. The IP can be company IP, it can be university IP. There can be no new IP. So we don't have any requirements when it comes to IP. It's just the collaboration that we're really interested in. The way the program works is, first, company will approach MIPS. They may or may not have a university researcher in mind. If not, we can assist you with finding someone who has the right background, right capabilities, right facilities to work with you or to work on your project. And the university researcher and the company will put in the proposal jointly to MIPS. If awarded, company provides the cost share, which is 10% for startup companies. It's more for larger companies, depending on the size, the employee numbers. And the university provides their expertise and facilities. They will get the work done. MIPS will provide the bulk of the project funding. And we really expect the company to use the research results, benefit from them, so they can commercialize new products, improve existing products, generate more revenues, and most importantly, add more jobs in the state of Maryland. I mentioned we cover all of the University of Maryland campuses. That's 14 campuses, including UMB, UMBC, and College Park. We get the most applications from these 3 universities. And we also cover St. Mary's College and Morgan State University. The main eligibility requirement we have is that the company has to have a physical presence in Maryland. They do not have to be headquartered in Maryland, but they have to have a physical presence in Maryland. And they have to convince our reviewers and our evaluation board that if the project is successful, that the company is likely to create jobs in the state of Maryland. Now, it's The program is really a win-win-win for everyone. Companies get the leverage of funding 1 to 10 for startup companies. They also gain access to faculty expertise and equipment. We don't take equity in the companies. We don't have paybacks. And faculty and the students, they get to work with companies on their cutting edge research, and they get to be more entrepreneurial. Sometimes students get hired by the companies. Imagine a PhD student working on a company project for 2-3 years. They write their thesis on that project, and after they graduate, companies are glad to hire them because they're employees who already know everything about their products. And of course, the state governments, our funder, they get their return as increased tax revenue. So let me get into a little bit more of the process details. As I mentioned, the primary criterion we have is job creation in the state of Maryland, because our funder is the state of Maryland, the government. We get all our funding from the state, so they have to make money by jobs created in Maryland. I mentioned that the company cash match portion is 10% for startup companies, and we define startup companies as under 20 employees. In that case, our contribution is maxed at $90,000 for a single phase, up to 2 phases. And the companies would put in a minimum of 10%. So 90-10 makes a nice round 100K per year funding. So they can do a 200K project for 2 phases. For small companies with 21 to 100 employees, the breakdown is 80-20. Our contribution is maxed at 100K, and the company would put in a 25K per phase. And for larger companies over 100 employees, it's a 50-50 split, with our contribution capped at 100 and 100 coming from the company for each phase, makes for a 400K total budget for a 2-phase project. We do 2 funding cycles per year. May 1st and October 15th are our usual deadlines. However, this coming cycle, May 1st falls on a weekend, so the deadline will actually be April 30th. When we receive the proposals in our online system by this deadline, we do technical reviews where we where we recruit technical experts in your specific fields. These are researchers at US universities or federal labs, and they're going to provide us with their scores and comments on the technical aspects of your proposal. We also have a business review. We have a list of economic reviewers. These are mostly local folks who have a lot of experience reviewing business plans. They're going to provide us with their scores and comments on the economic aspects of your proposal. And then our evaluation board makes the final decision on which projects to fund. So this whole review process takes about 60 days. And the projected start dates for these cycles are August 1st and February 1st. What do the companies get out of it? As I mentioned earlier, you get financial support, you get the leverage, access to university, both faculty and student expertise and facilities, and you can establish lasting relationships and perhaps hire students as future employees. Now, intellectual property is a big concern for a lot of life science companies. Where MIPS is concerned, there are really 3 scenarios. The first 2 are fairly straightforward. The third one's a little more complicated. So first scenario is, any technology the companies have developed prior to the start of the MIPS project belongs to the companies. Any technologies, and this is the second scenario, any technologies the university developed prior to the start of the MIPS project belongs to the university. And if the company wants to utilize any university-owned IP, you would have to license it or get an option to license separately. Just doing a MIPS project does not give you any rights to university-owned IP. Now, the third scenario is the more complicated one. What happens if there's new IP developed as a result of the MIPS project, which happens pretty often? If the new technology is developed by the university researcher, because they're university employees, they will submit an invention disclosure to the tech transfer office. And if they think it's worth it to submit a patent application, the university will do so, and they'll assume the upfront costs. However, the MIPS contract requires the university to extend an option to an exclusive license to the company. So you get the first refusal for an exclusive license for any technology coming out of this, and you can negotiate with them. If you do choose to negotiate, the negotiations are strictly between the company and the university's tech transfer office. MIPS is not involved in that stage. The only involvement we have with regards to IP is we basically force the university to offer you that first right of refusal. That's all. In many cases, the IP developed is add-on IP. It's based upon company-owned IP, and often companies end up getting really favorable terms from the university. So even though we provide confidentiality during the project, there is no confidentiality provided for the application because we don't make our technical reviewers or economic reviewers sign those NDAs, simply because it's hard enough as it is for us to recruit technical reviewers who are mostly doing it for the first time, and they're scattered all over the US at other universities. If we require them to sign NDAs, we would not be able to find enough technical reviewers to do that process. So if you have trade secrets, don't put them in your MIPS application. So we've done 66 rounds so far. That's 33 years. Our program has been around since 1987. We funded about 901 individual projects for 631 companies and 458 faculty members, because there are no limits on how many times you can apply for MIPS, and some companies applied for multiple MIPS projects. And you can see that the 901 projects is based on 2,400 applications received. Now, the success rate is much, much higher compared to some of the other SBIR programs that you've heard from earlier today, and you'll be hearing from later. It's mainly because we don't get as many applications as they do, simply because we have some pre-elimination steps built into this process. One, the companies have to put money in, so that's a big barrier. So we only get applications from companies who are very serious about the project that they're proposing, because they have to have skin in the game. And the other thing is the companies have to find a university researcher to partner with. And in some cases, the university researcher they contact may say, I don't think this is a viable project. And in those cases, those companies won't be able to find a researcher to apply with. So there are some elimination steps, but if you do put in a MIPS proposal, the success rate is typically between 30 and 50%, depending on how competitive each round is. These are some of our awardees from round 65. And as you can see, there are projects in all sorts of different fields. We have some, microalgae projects. We have medical devices. We have engineering projects, manufacturing projects. So we don't. I know this is a biohealth conference. It's all about life sciences, but typically about half the applications we receive tend to be life sciences, because there are a lot of life science companies in the state of Maryland. And the other half can be all sorts of engineering, manufacturing types of projects. We don't have any limits on, or software. We don't have restrictions on what types of projects they can be, as long as they're development projects, R&D projects that a university researcher, that is appropriate for a university researcher to work on. And this is our last round, round 66. Again, you'll see some algae projects or engineering and life sciences. I mentioned the program has been around since 1987, and we've had some really big success stories. These are some of the largest: Metamune, Martech, and Hughes Communications. These three companies alone generated over $40 billion in revenues since getting their MIPS projects. And the MIPS projects that these companies did were very, very critical in their success. I'll talk about them a little in a bit. So as I mentioned, all of our funding comes from the state government, and the main return is tax dollars returned to the state government through job creation. So MIPS companies have generated about 23,000 jobs over the years, and of those, over 7,000 jobs are currently active. So these jobs are generating all the tax revenues, up to 166 million for the state government, and another 125 million dollars worth to the counties in Maryland. Our budget is around 1.4 million from the state government, so that's a 38-to-1 return on investment. And every year we have to convince the legislators to continue our funding, and these are the numbers we basically show them. And another interesting number we looked at is the 5-year survival rate. As most of you know, the 5-year survival rate nationwide is about 50%, which means half the startups founded will not be in business 5 years later. So we looked at all the MIPS funded startup companies since 1987, and 87% of those were still around after 5 years. And then we said, okay, what about all-time survival, just beyond the 5 years? And we saw that 63% of all MIPS funded startups are still in business. And some of these startups were founded in the 1980s. Now, of course, you can interpret this in a number of ways. You can say maybe MIPS was so helpful that they got to be more successful, or maybe MIPS was just really good at picking the winners. Either way, if you've done a MIPS project, then your chances of success are much higher than a company who has not. We also have a partnership with Maryland's DNR, Department of Natural Resources. So about 10 years ago, DNR, a specific group within DNR that focuses on improving water quality by reducing nutrient and sediment runoff into the Chesapeake Bay, got some research funding. And they wanted to provide research grants to company work, but they didn't have an awards program that could handle it. And instead of creating a new awards program from scratch, they came to us. So what we do is we accept the applications through MIPS for any project that would fit their criteria, and we do the reviews. And then any project that might be of interest to DNR will be sent to DNR. They do their own reviews, and before our evaluation board meets, they'll say, okay, out of those companies, we want to fund these projects. So they provide additional funding to our project. So if you fit their criteria, your chances of success may be a bit higher. And these are some of the companies that we funded. One company does, this is a paving company. They remove phosphorus. Another company is an algae company. And we've also funded quite a few Oyster projects. And we typically fund 6 to 8 projects each year through the DNR collaboration. Now, MIPS, these are some of the keys about MIPS, key things. We require the companies involved to pay their part of the project costs upfront. So that's important to know. So if it's a $100,000 project that you're going to work on, the $10K is going to be due right before contract execution. But then the amount that we provide goes to the university, and it's non-dilutive, non-debt funding. And also we allow projects to further develop company intellectual property as well as university-owned IP. And that's fairly common for companies to come to us where their IP originated from a different university or maybe in-house. So I mentioned 3 success stories. Metamune is one of them. Metamune came to us many years ago when they had about 70 employees. So they were fairly small then, and they did several MIPS projects. And one of those projects was very key in Metamune getting the FDA approval for their Synagis vaccine, their flagship product. And now they have 3,100 employees in Maryland. That's a huge success story for us, and we can take credit for some of those employees. Another one is Martech. This is a company that extract certain compounds like DHA and ARA from algae, and their products are actually used in more than 2/3 of the world's infant formula market. This company came to us when it was just the two founders. They had an idea, they knew how to extract DHA, they knew how to sell it, but they didn't know how to grow algae. So they worked with a university group where the university developed the photobioreactors that they used, did the whole scale up for their system, and they're still using that system to date. They have over 100 employees in Maryland with over 350 million in annual revenues. And this company was acquired in 2010 for, I believe, $1.1 billion. Another one is HughesNet. And I'm sure many of you are familiar with Starlink, the satellite broadband that SpaceX is developing with thousands of low orbit satellites. So Starlink's biggest competitor is HughesNet. HughesNet has been around for a long time. And their main technology is really based on designs by Dr. John Bears at University of Maryland. And this whole thing was developed as a result of several MIPS projects. And this company generates close to $2 billion in annual revenues, and they have 1,300 employees, which 400 of those they attributed to MIPS. Now, a more recent project or company that we funded is WellDoc. They have the first FDA-approved smartphone app. They have a diabetes management system. So they came to us when it was just 3 employees, and MIPS sponsored their initial pilot study clinical trial that led to them getting the FDA approval. Now the company has 31 employees in Baltimore City, and they're rapidly growing. So that's all I wanted to present today. Here's my contact information. And like I said, I will be hosting a Q&A session tomorrow, 1 to 3. If you're interested, shoot me an email and I'll send you the calendar invite with the Zoom details. And I'd be happy to answer any questions then. And if you're still interested in MIPS and you want to talk further, I or one of my colleagues would be happy to schedule a meeting separately as well.
That's great, Owner. Thank you. And so for those of you who've been on all day, this is a little bit different when Owner's saying, well, not all the money goes to the company, but the key thing is you can get a $100,000 project or more, as he described, for only $10,000 up front. You do have to worry about not worry, but be careful and know what you're talking about with the IP in advance. And in addition to those huge success stories that he talked about that he and his team have been responsible for, many of us have seen this be a first step, even pre and simultaneous with SBIR and federal funding, where someone's doing a medical device form factor or they're trying to do a study. Can you just share as a couple examples the smaller startups specifically in life sciences? You don't have to share by name, but just sample types of projects that you've seen funded recently, please.
Actually, I did forget to add something about SBIRs on here. As you know, some of the agencies participate in this pilot program called Direct to Phase 2 SBIRs. And I've heard of many companies applying for that, but most of them were not successful. However, one company applied for a Direct to Phase 2 SBIR, and I'm sure you know that they require you to use a company project that is similar to a Phase 1. And in a lot of cases, they got rejected because the project they proposed was not really separated from other internal company projects. It didn't have reporting requirements. It was all mixed in. So the agencies didn't like that. But in this one case, one of our MIPS companies used their MIPS project as the Phase 1 equivalent, submitted to NIH. And the NIH actually liked the fact that we do external reviews. The majority of the funding came from an external group, MIPS in that case. The work was done at the university. It had very strict reporting requirements. So they said, oh yeah, that is like a Phase 1, and they accepted it, and the company ended up getting the Phase 2 directly without having to do a separate Phase 1. So that's that's something you should definitely look into. But one of our MIPS companies has been successful with that.
So you mentioned, thanks, Owner, you mentioned the universities, but I think sometimes people think College Park and they forget that they could work with a physician or a group up at UMB. You mentioned Morgan State. So some of the life sciences projects, I'm sure, emanate from some of these other institutions, right? UMBC?
Right. So as you can see here, we do a lot of projects at University of Maryland, Baltimore, and these are the life science projects that often involve clinicians. They could be, testing of a medical device, or it could be a small clinical trial. There are various projects that we fund. I mean, one project we funded is on a malaria vaccine clinical trial. Of course, our funding doesn't cover the whole clinical trial because it costs, I believe, like $3 million or something like that. But in that case, the actual trial is being done at Walter Reed through funds from the Defense Department. But they wanted to work with a University of Maryland physician who's really an expert in malaria vaccine clinical trials. So in that case, the MIPS funding covers the university researchers' efforts in designing the clinical trials, overseeing the trials, and then at the end, getting all the data and interpreting and writing the final report on it. So that's what the MIPS project covers. But the overall project is a $3 million project, bulk of it being done at Walter Reed through company funds they got from Department of Defense. And we cover the 200K portion of it that's done at University of Maryland. And similarly at College Park, there are a lot of prototyping work being done. There's a really good bioengineering department, and some companies come to us where they have a very crude prototype for a medical device, and they work with a bioengineering professor who takes that device and turns it into an actual product that can be mass manufactured.
And someone just asked a question that is buried here. I'll look for it in a second. I know we only have a minute. You mentioned the technical and the business feasibility. I remember those are important as a former reviewer, but also the growing jobs, the economic development piece about being in Maryland. So you said you can be out of state, headquartered out of state, but you have to show job growth in Maryland.
And you have to have physical presence in Maryland. You have to have at least an office or a mailing address in Maryland.
And then do you have to show just a presence of jobs, or that the technology is going to grow jobs? How robust does that Maryland presence have to be?
So you really have to convince the reviewers that somehow you're gonna create jobs in Maryland. I mean, one example I can give is Sherwin-Williams, the paint company, headquartered in the Midwest. They did a MIPS project, and when they applied, they said, okay, this is on a new line of paint products, and if it is successful, this company is going to grow everywhere. We already have, thousands of employees in Maryland throughout all the Sherwin-Williams stores. They said, we're going to grow everywhere, including in Maryland. And the reviewer said, oh yeah, it's going to create jobs in Maryland. And we don't really care about their growth elsewhere, but they show that they're going to grow in Maryland, and that's good enough for us.
Okay, and Rini and Ash, I'm going to ask the last two questions quickly, and then it's going to be your turn. So we had a couple questions about one, can they have two independent projects with two different faculty folks? Can those be funded at the same time? And the second question is, do you have to have the faculty member identified when you submit your application?
Sure. So two projects at the same time. We don't allow that, but you can stagger them. So you can start one project, and then 6 months later, you can apply for another project as long as it's different than the first one, and you convince the reviewers on the evaluation board that it's worthwhile. Then sure, you can do that. And the second question was on identifying researchers. So no, you don't have to identify the researcher first. We can provide assistance with that. What I would need is, have a discussion with you, and then I would ask you to send me a paragraph description of the project you would like to work on, and list the the qualifications and the background of the PI you're looking for. And then I can do a search. I can reach out to my contacts, or I may know someone off the top of my head worst case, I'll reach out to department heads and send them that paragraph and say, is there anyone in your department who might be interested or who might be a good fit? And if there is, I'll make an introduction. So we provide some assistance, but no guarantees.
So that's great. So if you have a project idea, reach out to Owner in terms of his help if you don't already know the faculty expert. And Owner, thank you so much for preparing your presentation, for enabling us to share the slides and the recording. I saw Kurt reached out for a meeting. I think, Kurt, if you didn't get Owner's email, let me know, because you were not on the MIPS list. If your last name is Henry, you can throw that in the chat and I'll get you the word. Owner, thank you very much. We're on to our next presentation.
Thank you so much.
Take care. Thanks.